Yes.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Mike Shea and Lisa Kahn again. We're doing a visa update. Pardon the background. I am in my truck in beautiful, soon to be rainy Polk County. So don't be fooled by the sunshine. Let me see if I can get that out of my background. And then Lisa, I think, is working from the home office today.
I'm actually in the office, but I had
wow.
a little glitch with my computer camera. So I'm using my cell phone to hold up in my office, but all good.
So I know I got some texts in the last 48 hours from some of our mutual clients that they've got their appointments. So
Yes.
E2 visa updates, what's going on?
Okay, so things are moving along, which is good. A lot of the cases that that I do are out of London, and that's where I have pending cases at the moment, as well as Toronto. So we had today, actually, we had email from London on a case that we filed April 6th. So we submitted April 6th, and today's August 3rd. So roughly 4 months, almost to the day, to get a response time, which is better than 5 months or 6 months.
All right.
We had another one on the 30th of July, so just a few days ago, and we had filed that one on March 31st. These are both out of London. And then prior to that, I think we had one that we'd submitted February 10th, and we got a response July 7th. So that one was closer to 5. Now it seems like we're down to 4 months. So 4 months is a good thing. Still same situation. Once we have the invitation to make an interview, we go into the system, we select the first available date, which is now, it defaults to like February, March still of 2021. We select that date, and then we request an expedite. So on the one that we did that on today, where we said, okay, we'll just grab that kind of what they call like a placeholder date for February, March, ask for the expedite, then they grant the expedite for the E2s. First available date was
September.
October 12th, I believe it is.
Is that Paul?
That one, I believe so. I believe so, if I'm looking at this right. Yeah. So right around mid-October now. So that's sort of 6 weeks out from where we are today, roughly.
Okay.
I guess if there's cancellations or things, let's say I had heard on another case next week, maybe I could get a date a little earlier than October, but it would only be generally if there's a cancellation or whatnot.
Okay.
And then the good thing now, in addition to maybe, roughly 4 months, but that could change, always could change, the national interest exception, which is pretty much being rubber stamped, at least by London. When they issued the E2 visa, they grant that national interest exception. Previously, they only granted it for 30 days from the date of the interview. So by the time you got the passport with the visa back, you'd already lost a few days, and it was for a single entry. Now it's valid for a year for multiple entries. Okay. So that's a good thing. So people that get a new visa and need to have that national interest exception and then come to the US, and maybe 4 months later, they've got to go back for a visit or something, they don't have to reapply for another national interest exception. Okay. And that's all over. So that's great.
Okay. Canada, we've got
Canada. Yeah. So last year when I had filed, say in September or so, we weren't able to get an interview until September of this year. So it took about a year, even though they reviewed it pretty quickly, like a 2-month turnaround, but they didn't schedule an interview till this September. We filed another one mid-February, and that one we heard back on about 4 months later. So it took a little longer to look at, but we could have gotten an appointment, I think, this month. The client wanted to wait until December because while that was pending, he and his family came from Canada as visitors. And we ended up, actually, his children are going to private school. So the children came in with the student visa status, and he and his wife came in as visitors. And so they're here. He's not working or closing on the business. So they're here lawfully, but they're going to go back in December.
Okay.
Because that was when they wanted to go back because of the kids' school. So that's a little different.
Now
Another one we filed in March this year, and we got took him about 3-ish months to review, and he's going in August. So that was a little faster now, really about 5 months turnaround time for Toronto. That'll be the first one going to an interview in Toronto now this year for me. So hopefully it'll be smooth sailing, but I'm happy to report back how Toronto is with the, the national interest exception, et cetera.
So we had done a change of status on a Canadian. So
Yeah,
let's talk about what that is, because I'm having to explain that to people. And then
sure.
and I'm finding out, or at least I found out in the last 48 hours from 2 Canadians, that they can't drive in. They're not being
Okay,
they're not being allowed to drive into the country. They have to fly in.
okay.
So
So there's
normally, hey, I want to
actually,
drive across the border, bring my home goods and everything. Nope. So
yeah,
there's a little bit of a logistics spin being spun at families trying to come in.
okay. So it depends what they're coming in for, I suppose,
Right,
to
but
a certain degree.
I, I guess it would, as I understand both of them, it was for just on a B1 on a tourist visa. They weren't allowing
Okay,
anybody to drive across the border. So
yeah, so
in light of
there's,
in light of a
uh,
change in status, that's a problem, right? So they're
there
having
is
a problem.
well, unless they're flying in, if they're flying in to visit, different story. So
Yeah.
there's actually a travel ban with, the US has a travel ban for Canada for individuals who are coming in through a land port of entry, driving across the border, or like a ferry boat, but not for air travel. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So, yeah. So the people that can travel over that are exempt, sort of, or not, or have an exception to that travel ban from Canada, is if they're coming to the US and kind of material supportive infrastructure, things like that. So sometimes you have maybe a truck driver that's out of Windsor and driving across the bridge with Detroit, but they're coming over because they're, maybe they're like a commuter type thing and they're doing work that's of importance to kind of industry and infrastructure. So that's the distinction there. And I'm not, yeah, so it's a difference between how they're coming in. I can pull that, I can send you that.
Not
The
a big
text
deal.
of that.
I mean, I just think people
Yeah.
need to understand if they're going to try that change of status like we did. So we had that family that was here for 6 months and we couldn't
Mhm.
process the E. They'd waited too long in the buying process. And then, we did it. I think we did that change of status in 6 days.
Yeah. So in general, if somebody is here pursuant to a lawful admission as a visitor, or maybe a student or some other lawful status that's not the ESTA or the visa waiver, because you cannot change your status to an E2 from the ESTA. But somebody comes in as a B1, B2, or maybe they came in a while ago as a visitor and then they extended their status with immigration. They can file with immigration an E2 petition to change their status from one non-immigrant classification like the B1, B2 over to the E2, and we can fast track or premium process those filings. The adjudication time is 2 weeks for payment of a premium processing fee of $2,500. So I have done that and ended up, I think I might have mentioned this on another call, but I did that for the Canadian fellow that we filed back in the fall, and they reviewed it in less than 2 months, but said you can't come till September, and he had to get over here because it was a new business, an upstart business. So he came in as a business visitor, and then we ended up doing the change of status and got that approved. So he's here, he can run the business, he's growing the business, and he'll go back in September for the actual visa.
Right. So I was trying to explain that to a Canadian last night and I said, look, you can do that. Yeah, you're landlocked, but you can also apply for the E at the same time.
Mhm.
So, one is
Sure.
not exclusive of the other. So you can be here, get your business up and running, be functioning. And then while you're running your business in the first couple months, when you have to go back for the E, we're looking at 4 to 5 months. So we're talking about, it's just,
Yeah.
it's a little bit more money, but you're in quicker.
Right. Another thing I wanted to mention too is that everything is changing all the time. So it's so important to always check to see, well, what's the current state of affairs today, because a travel ban that's in effect at this moment, and with certain exceptions, may not be the same situation a week from now, or
And that
2
was
weeks from now.
the conversation last night was, my wife works at the hospital, so I get a little bit of an insight with regard to what's happening and
Sure.
the wave. There is a second wave, and we're going to
Yeah.
flu season a second time. That's coming up in the fall. People need to, a thing like the change of status and that subtle nuance may be an option, because now I'm getting pushback from sellers because of the unknown variable of when are you
Okay.
coming. So sellers are
Right.
saying, I don't want to wait. Similar to what we saw,
Yeah.
back in the day, 10, 15 years ago, where it was a 6 month, 7 month, 8 month. Sellers aren't
Sure.
waiting that much longer.
Right.
And if Canada, I'm speaking specifically to Canada,
Okay.
seem to be more draconian in their lockdowns. I was with a Canadian about an hour ago.
Mhm.
He says it's bad, where they're basically, you can't do anything, you can't leave the building, they're tracking you.
Yeah,
So
yeah, they're much tougher, I think, than we are here in Florida, for sure.
for sure. But
Yeah.
as it relates to trying to get this whole process rolling, they have to kind of educate themselves a little bit about the change of status, and that is an option in concert with doing the full E.
Yes,
Because there's still limited inventory, and you know, there's limited inventory on whole, but then there's even more limited inventory where that relates to what's going to qualify for a visa. So
sure,
um,
sure.
the buyers don't have a lot of options here. They've got to if they're going to do this, they have to kind of live with that market reality and then deal with
Yeah,
the legal process that's most efficient. All right, so
agreed.
summary, we're a little bit faster in London than we were a couple months ago. We're gone from 5 months
Mhm.
to 4 months, so that means we're working through the backlog. Canada remains about 5 months. Um, the fear being, if there's a second wave, will there be another shutdown?
Right,
And nobody knows the answer to that.
correct, exactly.
Yeah.
Even with the very beginning, of the COVID situation last March, most of the embassies were still continuing to accept the E2 applications and review and adjudicate them. It was just, well, we don't know if we're going to be able to interview these or when we're going to start interviewing again. So it could end up being something like that, where maybe they put the brakes. Some countries, they are not interviewing E2s at all. So thankfully for many that we work in like London and Toronto, they still are. But it could change, where they say, okay, we're putting the brakes. You can still submit your application. We'll look at it, but we can't schedule an interview if they go into, more serious lockdown mode.
All
One thing that, I don't know if you see this much too, let's say you have somebody who wants to come look at a business before they put an offer on it. It's a matter of, well, how do I get over here now when there's a travel ban and I can't just get an exception because I'm looking at a business? If someone goes to a non-travel ban country, so let's say you've got somebody in England that wants to come scout out some businesses, but says, how do I get to the US? If they go to a non-travel ban country like Mexico, which is at the moment not a travel ban country, or Croatia, for example, and if they can get in and, whatever the requirements are getting in, if they stay there for 2 weeks, then they may be able to fly directly to the US. So I've had some folks do that, where they've gone from the UK to Mexico, stayed there for 2 weeks on vacation, then entered from Mexico under the ESTA to be able to, work on getting a business.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or do what we're doing and go virtual and navigate
Right.
it.
That too. Yeah.
Not preferred, the reality.
I know for folks that were here in the US, then from the UK and then flying back, let's say somebody has an E2 in the pipeline, but had come over to visit or go to Disney or something like that. Now they have an interview and they're going back. When they return back home, there was a quarantine requirement. That's been modified if someone's fully vaccinated. Those rules are changing all the time. That's probably more critical for people that are on a renewal, where they're renewing the visa. They've already been here, they live and work in the US, and they're going back for renewal, and they were stuck having to, sit for 2 weeks of quarantining before they could show up for an interview, and to be away from a business for 3-4 weeks is really hard.
Yeah. So we've had some improvement, still kind of status quo up in the air. Knock on wood, nothing's going to change, but we have to be updating every day.
Yeah.
Countries are different. Check your options, get creative, realize
Yes.
the market's a little competitive right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
all right. So your website information, contact information.
Sure. Website is lisavisa.com, and then email is lisa@lisavisa.com.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, madam.
All righty. Nice talking with you.
Was good.
Yeah.